First, I want to say welcome to the Sweet Lady Bees. It made me think about, my name is Beth Buelow. So I could say I'm the Sweet Lady Bees as well. So there's something poetic about them being the musicians this morning. I don't know about you, but I am tired. Is anybody else tired? Oh, yeah. I'm normally someone who would take this theme of unfolding and run with it in terms of the virtues of expanding our horizons, whether that's how we see ourselves or we see our world. I would typically go with the idea that unfolding is what we're called in this life to do. The more I'm on this earth, the more I believe Rilke's words. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. Those are words of unfolding. Those are words that I think are about the meaning of life, to keep living in ever-widening circles without attachment to knowing where they go or what will happen. And yet, all that widening circles is making me tired. When I considered this theme of unfolding that Brad introduced to us, my mind immediately went to the opposite, folding. Instead of becoming bigger, becoming smaller. If we're going to explore unfolding, it seems only fair to think about what it means to be folded, particularly the ways that being folded is good for us and for our spirit, and the times that folding is not the answer. And of course, in typical C3 fashion, I had to look up the official definition of fold, because it's one of those words that we might not think about. And frankly, I was kind of surprised. I was reminded of all of these different ways that the word fold is used. First, it's an incubator place. It's a place of protection. We use it to talk about safety or comfort or nurturing. It's about belonging. When you're in the fold, you're part of the group. Most often, they refer to that as like a flock of sheep is a fold. A church, or a group sharing common beliefs, values, etc. Sound familiar? We're a fold of sorts. There's the use of the word fold as in above the fold, which will probably go by the wayside because we don't look at newspapers anymore. But when you think about whatever the most important thing is, it's above the fold. It's a differentiator. It's where it stands out. We talk about folding in cooking. Integration. After you go down the not so precious moments rabbit hole, I invite you to also Google or go onto YouTube and look for fold in the cheese. And I can tell that you're laughing because some of you are Schitt's Creek fans and you know what I'm talking about, with Moira and David freaking out about how to fold in the cheese. And then there is what I refer to in the title about folding being a place of release. We let go, we fold, we set things down, we walk away, we even quit. And I wonder why my mind went in this direction besides being kind of a natural contrarian. I think it's because I've always felt that urge to push back against all of the ever, huge expansions of things, of go big or go home kinds of messages, because they shame an important part of us being human. And that's going inward, introspection, and self-protection. Both of those things contribute to resilience, which is ultimately an internal characteristic. Resilience means that we have those inner resources to handle those external challenges. There's often this implication that being folded or turning inward on yourself or holding your cards close to the vest is unhealthy. But it would be exhausting to constantly live with unfolding. Constant expansion, constant outwardness. So I want to explore this idea of folding from two different angles, when it's healthy and when it's not, and how in order not to fold, we need to fold. So are you still with me? I'm structuring this like This American Life episode. So this is Act 1, the virtues of folding. Let's start from the very beginning. We start out our lives folded. We're folded in the womb. We're protected, we're cradled and kept safe. And the ultimate unfolding is when we come out of that womb and we extend our legs and we extend our arms and we make our first cries. But then, in the spirit of keeping us protected, we continue to be folded by those who care for us. We're folded into car seats. We're folded into strollers. We're folded into people's arms. And we continue to be kept safe through that holding close and that embrace. So folding is how we start our lives. And our job over time is to unfold. And when that gets too exhausting, it's no wonder that when we're under stress, the urge to fold, to curl up, is so strong. I don't know how many times over the past few years, maybe throughout the entirety of our marriage, my husband and I have looked at each other and said, I just want to curl up in the fetal position. Just wake me up when it's all over. That instinct to turn inward and assume the fetal position is a natural response. We're protecting, on a physical level, we're protecting all of our vital organs. We're protecting our heart, our lungs, our gut, our throat. We're keeping ourselves from being too vulnerable in those moments. Now, I am a big fan of unfolding, and I'm a fan of being vulnerable and really opening up and being our true selves. But sometimes I believe in order to do that, we need to spend time in that folded space. And that's a belief I've carried for years, despite or even in spite or to spite the going back to bed folks. Many of you know that I've spent many years playing in the sandbox of introversion and speaking and writing and coaching around introversion. And something that was important to me from the very beginning was to propose that being introverted is not necessarily about your personality. It's about your energy. It's about your orientation. And an introvert is not just a noun or an adjective, it's a verb. I introvert, you introvert, we all introvert. And so it follows that we can think of unfolding or unfurling as extroverting. We're making ourselves larger and expanding ourselves out into the world. And we can think of folding and going inward as introverting. Many of us need that introverting in order to do the unfolding. And that's maybe why I was drawn to look at this topic from this particular angle, because I feel like there's always a need to have some balance. Spending time in that furled, folded place can be very fruitful. It's kind of an incubator space. It's like going back to the womb. And maybe being folded is our comfort zone, which can get a bad rap. But comfort zones serve a purpose. It's where we grow and recharge, we reconnect with ourselves, we catch our breath, we recalibrate, we reorient ourselves to what's most important. We have to have a little bit of that contraction. We have to have a little bit of turning inward if we're going to be healthy and sane and balanced. We've talked so much here at C3 about the shadow and those things that are a little bit more underground and hidden behind the curtain. We need those things. We need to have that storage space that's out of sight. And I was thinking about these past few weeks when I was up at the family summer cabin on Old Mission Peninsula. We have some folks that are renting it for a short time, some friends of the family. And so Andy and I have spent the last 2 weeks cleaning, getting everything in order, getting rid of cobwebs that are probably 20 years old, buying new things, spiffing the place up. It was fun and exhausting. And of course, just as there is in every home, at least I hope every home, there's one room that's maybe the junk room. Like we all have a junk drawer. Some of us have a junk room, if we have that much space. It might be a storage unit, it might be a shed in your yard, it might be someplace in your home, it might be a corner of your garage. But you've got someplace where you stash things, where you can fold them away and hide them out of sight. That room is a piece of us that needs to just kind of squirrel things away to keep them in the dark. Until we're able to clean that space out, there's comfort in knowing that if we don't know what to do with something, if we're not ready to throw it away, or we're not ready to hang it up on the wall or put it on the shelf, that there is a resting place that it can go until it's ready to be unfolded and ready to be shared. And back to the idea, to close out this act, of folding as protection. We can consider the Marie Kondo quote about how we fold our clothes. The act of folding is far more than making clothes compact for storage. It's an act of caring, an expression of love and appreciation for the way these clothes support your lifestyle. Therefore, when we fold, we should put our heart into it, thanking the clothes for protecting our bodies. Clothes are the protectors for probably 99.9% of humanity. It's one of the ways we keep ourselves safe. And so her invitation to express gratitude as we engage in the act of folding reminds me that we have to take care of the things that take care of us. And it's a good reminder to express that love and gratitude to people, places, and things that keep us safe and that are with us in that folding. Act 2, the folly of folding. When I first started thinking about folding, the voice of Kenny Rogers rang in my ears. And as Todd said, I do take responsibility for the earworm that you're all going to leave with, but I am also grateful to the sweet lady bees who are going to solidify that earworm later. So be ready. Maybe it's because I grew up listening to country music. Did anybody else grow up like that was the default? Oh, just one? Okay, a couple. Confession. Okay, good. Thank you. Good. I grew up listening to country music and The Gambler, along with The Devil Went Down to Georgia and El Paso, which is the song Marty Robbins sings about falling in love with a Mexican girl. Those were the first songs that I remember knowing the lyrics to. So I've had it as an earworm my entire life. And I would sing along, not really knowing what I was saying, because I was probably, 7, 8, but I knew there was something soothing about the rhythm of the words. And you can say them with me. You got to know when to fold them, know when to hold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. And I probably did think it was about a literal poker game or whatever card game they were playing. But I also knew on some level that it was a metaphor. And so, like I said, when I looked up the definitions, this same metaphor came up. To fold means to walk away, to shut down, to give in, surrender, release. And that leads us to considering the political environment and how this idea of folding shows up in some of the biggest questions facing our leaders and even facing our country and us as individuals. And I'm sorry, not sorry for going there. In the wake of everything happening, including yesterday's horrific events in Pennsylvania, it's impossible to avoid. The questions that have been asked of our leaders lately, and maybe even of ourselves, do they know when to fold them? Do they know when to walk away? Are they staying in the game past the time that it makes sense? Just as we look at those questions on a societal level, it's important to consider them on a personal level. What about the choices we've made over the course of our lives? When have we decided to fold? What led us to doing that? What was the catalyst? What was the consequence? How do we know it was the right thing? And if we were to do it again, would we make the same decision? And what came up in pre-talk was, when did we hold on too long? When should we have quit long before we did? When were we stubborn? Just as I don't think of folding into a fetal position as keeping myself necessarily, small in a bad way, I don't always think of folding as quitting. Quitting has such a negative connotation. Sometimes quitting is necessary. Sometimes it's the smart thing to do. Just as there is projected shame associated with turning inward and assuming that fetal position, there's some shame associated with quitting or folding and walking away. I think about the times in my own life when I've walked away from something. And I can't believe I forgot this, but I remembered in pre-talk, I once had a job for one day. Has anybody else just had a job for one day? It wasn't even a fast food job. It was like a job. It was in Milwaukee, and it was for a market research firm, and I thought I wanted to go into market research. And I spent my first day going around to different teams and learning about what they did. And I went home, and I'm like, nope, this is not for me. And I went in the next morning to the HR person. I sat down across from her, and I said, hello, this is not for me. That's them calling and saying, we want you back. And she was totally cool about it. As an HR person should, because you don't want somebody who's not going to be happy in that job. And so in 15 minutes, I was done, So that was one of those times when quitting was absolutely the right thing to do. But to be honest, I haven't walked away or folded from much. And the reason is I don't really think about it as walking away. I think about it as going through some sort of discernment process and determining this is not the direction I want to go. There's something different that I need to be doing. I go back to something I shared when I taught on Easter Sunday, which is about discerning if something is in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. That's when a lot of suffering happens, when we get attached because we think something is for a lifetime, and so we cling to it. And this can be especially true for relationships. It can be hard to recognize when we're in it for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. When it comes back to the political situation, I think many of us thought in 2020 that we were making a choice for a reason and a season. We didn't think it was for a lifetime. But the truth is, the reason and season is still here, and it's very urgent. If we zoom up and look at the big picture, the relationship that we're in right now is with America. And in a way, it's with history. We're trying to make it clear that democracy isn't just here for a reason or a season. It's here for a lifetime. Human rights are here for a lifetime. Freedom is here for a lifetime. So as tired as I am, as tired as we all might be, we can't fold. We can't walk away. We can't abandon ship. We have to be radically attached to the ideals of democracy. We have to cling to the brightest version that we have for our communities and our neighbors. I know I've shared that I have a folder in my web browser, bookmarks, labeled Canada. And it's been tempting in the last month to revisit those pages. And it just occurred to me, actually, as I was writing those words, that the word folder is akin to fold, as in it's something that holds together and protects important information. So, of course, I have a folder named Canada. I've been so close to folding over these past 9 years, and I'm guessing many of us have. What if the worst happens? What if we need to walk away from the only country that I've known as home? What if the situation becomes hostile, indefensible, even dangerous? And I know using those terms as we sit here right now in our comfortable and safe and privileged space might seem a bit overly dramatic. And some people, maybe a lot of people, would say, you have no idea what it's like to live in a hostile or indefensible or dangerous situation. You have absolutely no idea. Quit being spoiled babies. Get up and fight. But I'm not a fan of saying, well, somebody else has it worse, so I have nothing to complain about. That implies that we're not entitled to our feelings. We are entitled to our feelings and our emotions. We're all entitled, if we feel it, to feel despair when we're faced with the possible consequences of our democracy being lost. That might not be despair to someone else, but it's despair to me. It's existential despair, and it's 100% valid. Even through that despair, I've been able to hear from voices wiser than my own and far wiser than many who have been given a megaphone that are pointing me to stay the course, to keep the commitment, to not walk away from the table, to keep a hand in the game, to let this radical experiment that is America play itself out. Because as we also talked about in pre-talk, quitting is not an activity that just affects you. It doesn't just affect me. It affects everyone, because we're all connected. We're in a committed relationship. So I'll say it again. We cannot fold. We cannot walk away. We can't run. And I do want to fold. I do want to curl up in that fetal position. But I'm going to do my best not to, at least not for too long. I'm going to keep going, and we're going to keep going with the help of communities like this. And as I was putting these thoughts together, I realized that I might be repeating a few of the things that I've said before when I've stood up here for a teaching. And I decided that's okay. I need to share what's on my heart and mind, and I need to hear things more than once. Maybe you do too. I need to hear them over and over again until they really become part of me. I can fold them in, and then I can really believe them. They move from being an intellectual understanding to a more emotional truth. So you might be thinking, I'm having deja vu all over again listening to her. But I believe that the timing is right to bring this message about taking care of ourselves unapologetically. Introverting, folding inward, protecting our hearts to the degree that we need to so that we can unfold, so that we can keep unfolding when we're faced with challenging circumstances and seemingly insurmountable obstacles. It's not an either and, it's not an either or. I don't think I've ever said either and. It's not an either or, it's a both and. So honor your need and urge to fold, to turn inward, and use that time to store up your energy like a squirrel stores up acorns for the winter. Store up that energy for when we need to resist the urge to fold or to walk away. Use that time and energy to build the resilience that's necessary to enlarge your heart and your spirit and your courage, your bravery, so that we can get out there and do what needs to be done to protect and preserve what we hold dear. I'm changing the way I end this talk because I was remembering a story that I heard on a podcast recently. The podcast is called Person of Interest, which is such a brilliant name for a podcast where she's interviewing persons of interest. And I don't know if any of you would have heard of this, but in this case, the interviewee was Emily Henkel, not a name that you would necessarily know. But she and her boyfriend, Alex, were avid hikers, avid campers. And back in April of 2001, they went hiking and camping in Death Valley. Now, April is kind of on the cusp. If you've been to Death Valley, like right now, don't go there. 130 degrees, right? But April, it's probably reaching up into the 80s and 90s. It's not necessarily when you want to be lost or stuck in Death Valley. But they were experienced campers, and they had firm plans. They knew where they were going. They had talked to rangers. They had all their equipment. They were doing what they could to be safe. And they ended up going off-road and off itinerary. And the Subaru that they were driving went over some jagged rocks, and they blew 2 tires. They just shredded them. And they were off the beaten path, for sure. Does anybody know this story or remember hearing about this? Okay. When Emily was being interviewed, it was 2 months after this incident happened, which is remarkable. So their tires were shredded. They were out in the middle of nowhere. So they decided, they left notes on their car. I mean, you listen to this and you learn, okay, would I be smart enough would I know to do these things? So it's worth listening to, because hopefully none of us are ever going to get stuck in Death Valley. But you never know. They didn't expect to get stuck, right? So they left, they wrote notes on their car. They left notes in the car seat. They said, here's where we're going. Here's our plan. They took water with them. They did everything that they thought they were supposed to do. They mapped out what route they were going to take to try to get back to a main road. In the course of doing that, they had to go over a rather steep cliff. And Alex fell. And his injuries were such that he died 30 minutes later. And Emily, in the course of trying to go after him, also fell, and she shattered her ankle. And so she was immobile down this crevice with her dead boyfriend 15 yards away, 15 feet, 15 yards, I can't remember, but whatever it was close. And fortunately, she had a solar battery charger for her phone, so she could keep this charged. And she used this to kind of keep herself sane. She recorded messages to her loved ones. She talked about what was going on with her. She said goodbye messages. And she was there for 5 or 6 days by herself, not knowing if anybody was going to find them. She even got bit by a scorpion on her swollen foot. And you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know if I could do it. And she had to keep telling herself. And it was really funny. I thought of you, Brad, because in that very first talk, you used that expression, go with the flow. She used that expression like 4 or 5 times when she was describing who she was as a person in the beginning. She's like, I'm a go with the flow. I go with the flow. And so I think that was probably part of what kept her alive, was just going with what is. trying to work with that. And eventually she was rescued. She had surgery. She didn't lose her foot. She's gone on to work with parks, and she's got a new boyfriend, and so life is picking up. But she's adopted the phrase, "we can do hard things." That's what she kept telling herself. I can do hard things. We can do hard things. I even thought about that when we were at the cabin and I was trying to put on a furniture cover. Has anybody tried to put on a furniture cover? Like, you got the big elastic thing, and it's like, the best way I can think of is like putting a condom on your couch. That's how I finally got it in my head. Like, this is what you got to do. And I can't believe I just said that, but there you go. But it's so funny because I thought, I can do hard things. Stick with it. Don't give up. Don't fold. We can do hard things. So I want to leave with that phrase of Emily's when we think about not folding in the face of adversity and challenge. So I'll just leave it at that and say, we can do hard things. Thank you.